I'll start by just announcing that our 2U rep, John Sanderson, is no longer with us. He has stepped back from his role. So we could thank him for his service, and his replacement will be announced in due course. I'll start with apologies for absence.
Apologies from Councillors Daly, the Reverend Lennox and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Any apologies from the floor? Any councillors? No, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to have a look at these meetings? Anything that they want to pick up on, or can we move these as a true record?
Move the true record.
Thank you. And item 3, disclosure of interests. Has anybody got anything to disclose that they haven't previously disclosed? Thank you very much. We'll start with item 4, annual presentation report 22-23. This will be delivered by Karen.
Thanks very much, Councillor. I'm Karen Willis, I'm Complaints Manager for Children's Services. We've brought the report forward. It's a statutory requirement to provide an annual report on the representations procedure for children's services. Apologies first of all for it being a little bit late in the financial year, because we are looking back to 2022-23, but we have reflected well on the previous year, so it is a bit late in the year due to various issues within the team, me being off sick for one of them. But we're bringing the report forward just for information purposes to assure councillors that we are working within the statutory requirements of the legislation for the children's process. It's a statutory process. We also have the council's corporate complaints process as well. So it's managing all representations either through the formal process or informal through what we call inquiries as well. So it's just more of an information report on top line figures, in fact, how we're dealing with them, making sure they are dealt with through appropriate process. Some of the things I just wanted to point out from within the report is it does look like we've had a big increase in the number of complaints. That is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that the council is more open to receiving feedback in the many various forms. People are becoming more aware of their rights, more aware of process. We're advertising it correctly in accordance with the regulations. So yes, whilst it looks as if the numbers are increasing, I would ask you more to look at the outcomes of the complaints and the representations made in terms of what is upheld, where fault has been found. And you'll note on page 4 that only 8 were fully upheld out of the 71 received. 31 were partially upheld, which means that there could be various elements to complaints. Some was upheld, some weren't. We're trying to do analysis of that to find out the themes around complaints, if there's areas of work that we need to focus on. We do have external scrutiny from the Ombudsman, pages 7 to 10 of the report. We're doing an annual letter from the Ombudsman mentioned in there, and they provide facts and figures around what they're investigating from the council, from the complaints made at the council as well. There was one public report issued by the Ombudsman during the 2022-23 year. They only do that when there is believed to be a wider public interest, so it's not just one person maybe that's affected by the issue of the complaint. That was dealt with accordingly, and the Ombudsman was satisfied with how the council dealt with that and processed it. Excuse me. Page 11, we do the categorisation and themes of complaints. You'll note from that we are working around that for training for the forthcoming year. On how to embed learning into the service improvements. We are also hoping to have improved data and scrutiny of the themes categorisations in coming years, because we've introduced a new casework management system for the complaint handling as well, which is going to give far improved data collection and reporting. We're busy working on the report system at the moment, so hopefully future years will provide with far better data around that as well. One of the findings was that we need to improve on our response time scales. However, that's the statutory response time scales. However, due to the complexity of some of the complaints when I receive the op, they can be really quite in-depth. We keep in contact with the complainants, keep them informed so that they're informed every step of the way. So, but we do need to work on that to comply with the statutory timeframes around that. So yeah, the focus at the moment is around the iCasework system, building on that, make sure we've got all of the teams involved within the service to work on the complaint side, work within the iCasework system, give a better recording and reporting, provide with better intelligence moving forward. And really that's in a nutshell. We'll just, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them or answer them. And we are hoping to have the annual report for the 23-24 year for quicker after April. So we'll have that coming to you. Any questions?
Thank you, any questions from the floor?
Yes, thank you, Tess. Thank you very much for this. I'm just wondering about the percentage of the increase of complaints. You said that there's been more usual, but you know whether the procedure is a bit different. I don't know for complaining. So I just wondered, for you said what year are you referring to for that?
This is 2022-23, so that's obviously not it's not this financially, it's not 23-24. We're looking back over. This report should have probably come to you earlier last year.
Do you have a percentage of the increase
for this year?
Yeah.
No, not as yet, because obviously we'll finalise the year's figures at the end of this month, and a further report will be coming for 23-24 in I think it's June, July time-ish. The next facts.
And do you have any stats for compliments?
I believe in the back of the I have included it. There's an appendix at the back of the report with compliments received on there as well, examples of them. It is, I can't remember which page it is now. 23, thank you. Around the compliments received. They are obviously fed back to officers direct managers, and they are also used to service improvements as well.
Okay, so you have the number. The
compliments. There are examples in the I don't think I'll record them.
Oh, that would be useful to put it on here.
My apologies. Yeah, I can certainly make sure that the number of compliments are recorded.
Thank you.
Oh, I have, sorry, page 2 of the report, paragraph 3.2. We received 96 complaints across the service during that period. And they were received from young people, parents, carers, other professionals, and on occasion court judges. So we'll record feedback and compliments from all areas. So yeah.
What was that, 93?
96.
96,
yeah.
Did you want to add something in?
Yes, please. I was looking at page 19, which is the kind of nature of the complaints, and going forward, what would happen. And given that the nature of a lot of the complaints seems to be about communications and delay in responding,
yes,
I do worry that the quarterly report is counterproductive. That kind of staffing. I find in my job, I do quarterly now, it takes up quite a lot of time. Once you've finished one, you've got another one looming. And I would have thought that those staffing resources, as they are, would be better put into actually just getting on with the complaints.
We agree.
Would you?
Oh, good.
So please.
I would probably agree with you, yes. It's focusing on the
bureaucracy rather than the actual on the ground stuff. I hate quarterly reports.
Noted, thank you very much. Councillor Ball, I think you wanted to ask.
Yes, so I've got a couple of questions. So with regards to failure to follow policy and procedure, what's the difference between that and complaint about policy? Because is it our policies or how they're being followed? That's one question.
Yeah.
I was going to say, do you want us to just knock them all out and more? Obviously you're saying that the next report's due, you'll be waiting on that at the moment. So I'm just wondering about the direction of travel. And also, if we're investing in this technology, is it a case if we need new technology or do we need to use some of the systems better that we already have? Because we can spend thousands and thousands of millions of pounds on technology, and it's still not actually reduce the complaints or how complaints are handled and timescales. So I'm just wondering about that. Is what is this technology, and will it actually improve the whole service?
Right. First one was, remind me, what was the first
Policies
Policy,
and
different.
failure.
The failure to follow policies procedure is the fact that we have policy and procedures already set, and its officers maybe is not following part of that policy or procedure. Complaints about policy is somebody unhappy with the policy itself. We don't normally consider those at throughout the complaint process. It's normally a stage one response saying this is the response that's been set by our council, our committees, our yourselves. And that's what officers have to work towards. So there's a difference between failure to comply with the policy.
Yeah.
So, a complainant might be saying that the officers aren't following the set procedure or policy, or they are happy with the policy. So there's a slight difference in that.
Cool.
Second one.
Oh, it's gone now. About the new direction of travel.
Direction of travel. Yeah. Obviously, we will. Stuff from last year, we are, it's already kind of been embedded in service improvements as we've gone along. I meet regularly with Graham with regards to the complaint learning, and we come up with training programs and identify stuff. So we're reflecting all the time throughout the year. And so the stuff from this report will have already been embedded into service provision for, we will look at the information from 23-24, and that'll be sort of form and services for the forthcoming year ahead. So the direction of travel is we're always kind of reflecting back but taking that forward into service provision as well.
And the final one was technology.
Yeah, and the new system, it's not just for children's services complaints, it's a decision that's been taken across the council because we didn't have a really good case management system for complaints. In fact, we had a better provision within children's services, but corporate wise across the rest of the council, there was a very limited system in terms of recording and reporting on complaints. So we've actually got a corporate complaints manager in now as well. She's been in post for about 2 years. This is a project that's been ongoing for the last couple of years, and we've finally got the system in November into 2023. And this, we really didn't have a very good system at all. Yeah. And it's part of the requirements of the complaints processes for complaints managers to have a good system to record and report. So the decision was taken, as I say, for reporting across the council. So in some respects, children's services were ahead of the game anyway, because we had a dedicated team for complaints and we were recording them. But this system is really going to improve how we deal with them and how we can report.
Yeah, and can I just come back on that? So the system, is it now like RAG rated, time flags on it?
Yeah.
I do have that little bit of concern if it was good before in children's services and then we're almost removing it.
No,
so
totally different.
There's still that.
Yeah, the reason why we had such a good system is because we've got a dedicated team in children's services for dealing with complaints. Corporate doesn't. Corporate didn't. It was all done in individual departments. So this is to bring more of a central team together, so that across the council, so all the different departments, planning, house, and everything else, we can record all of their complaints as well, because they were all held in different places. The reason we had it so good in children's is because we've got a dedicated team, and we were using things like spreadsheets and various things. So we didn't have a dedicated IT system. We just had the resource to do spreadsheets and various recordings and hold that information centrally. The rest of the council didn't. So this is why this new system's been brought in.
Thank you very much. That was very informative. I'll report on to Councillor Watson, is that right? And then Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you for the report. What I really like is the real life examples of the compliments. And I don't get that so much in the complaints. It's more about the actual complaint themselves, and there might be a reason to that. But when it talks about lessons learned and it talks about continual service improvement and getting feedback from service users, I'm just wondering if there's any co-production to this, because some of the things from the compliments, you took time to listen, you changed my life, you brightened my day. I mean, they're amazing things that you're doing with people's lives. So just bringing those people in to kind of look at when complaints haven't gone so well, or is there some co-production on that?
We do that more within the training side of things. We discuss it through we use examples, anonymised examples of complaints within training. We did a course a few years ago for staff, My Customer, My Responsibility, and we actually used anonymised. So we ask the complainants at the end of that complaint if they're happy for us to use the details of their complaints anonymised as learning examples for the staff in various training programmes. So I haven't included them within there because obviously some of the complaints contain very personal details, very personal information. So we use it, but more on an internal basis for the training side.
And having people involved to look at, the service users, the people who are making the complaints or making the compliments, having them involved in doing these things.
We do. As I say, when we're doing the anonymised complaints and what they've taken for it, we do get impact from them. We do ask for how it's impacted them. Anything that will help with raising staff awareness to the various issues that may have affected them. So we do ask them to contribute towards that. Yeah.
I'd just like to see them design things as well. That's just me personally. Like,
it is something we would like to improve on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Rather than just getting their feedback and how it's impacted them, but then to actually look at taking it forward and how it's designed going forward. I don't know.
Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think there are statutory processes that do define how we have to do it. And just to emphasise the point that the learning is continuous. So if there are complaints where there's individual learning for staff, that's undertaken with the key staff. But clearly the themes, and as I said, the quarterly reporting comes in themes to our quality performance meeting. So that's shared and we look at ways of training and developing as we go the learning. So it's a key part of our quality of practice, our quality assurance work, is the feedback from the complaints and compliments process. And I think the point we have in previous years had service users who have come and speak about their experience, and that's not only on occasions though, given the nature of what we're talking about at times. I think we've got to be very sensitive about that, but certainly every time I'm the adjudicating officer, every time we will ask, we're very clear that we want to learn from anything that we're doing, and we will get feedback from the complainants to inform our service development as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Karen, for bringing this forward. There's a few things I'd like to go through. So when we're looking at the table on your page 3 of the report, going back to year 1920, and then we see various totals, throughout there. And I know from a member's point of view that around the pandemic, I've seen an increase in the number of issues and concerns and complaints raised, which started around the lockdown, where people working from home seem to have had more of a focus around where they live, etc. Now, we haven't got the numbers before that, so I don't know what happened before that. But to see that there's been like an increase, especially recently, and you're saying that we're more open, and that's fine. I know, I get that. And it's only right, as you say. But relating the numbers, I want to look at the table on your page 11. You've only got the 22, 23 numbers on there. I don't know whether you've got the previous numbers. That's all the categorisation.
Page must be right.
Yeah. So I don't know whether you've got the previous year, but what I would like to see in future reports is the year by year, so we can see, do we have the same issues in the same areas, or have we improved, etc.
Yeah.
And a couple of things from that. So you mentioned about the communications and information. I know from both being, I'm going to say, a customer, but also from being a member, one of the really frustrating things is the lack of communication. And I'm going to say this now as a member. What really gets me is you send something in, you make a phone call, and you hear nothing again. And as a customer from whichever company I might contact, there is nothing worse than just saying, is anyone dealing with this? Are they bothered? So it's really key to just keep that, getting back in touch. And I used to be a manager in contact centre industry. I used to say to my staff, make sure you get back in touch. Tell them when you're going to get back in touch. Even if it's just to say, look, I don't have an update, but we're still working on it, and I'll get back in touch at that point. At least they know that they are still so important. And that it's such an important thing, just to keep that handhold and keep in contact with them. I agree with what Councillor Fairless-Aiken was saying. And I've worked in areas where half your job was dealing with customers and the other half was writing about your job, about what you've been doing about dealing with customers. If you ever get to that point where half your job is writing about your job, about what you're doing, and you can't spend more time in dealing with the residents, please shout up about it, because you should be dealing with. And I know the reporting side of it is very important, because we need to know what's going on, but you need to be focusing on the people, and that's where the balance needs to be. And if there's too much pressure on saying we need this report, we need you to fill this out, we need you to fill that out, then you're thinking that's taking up more of my time. We need to know about it, because that balance is wrong.
If I can respond to that.
Can I just quickly let Audrey come in?
Yeah.
Just to make a point before you
absolutely.
finish.
I was just going to ask Councillor Swinburne about the response to communication. I think is that specific to children's, or is it?
No.
I just wanted to be clear, because what we're reporting here today is children's.
Yeah.
And I know Karen does link in with a more corporate team, but clearly, if that was a children's issue, that would be something I'd want to take up with the team. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's with other areas which have been raised. But this is just in general terms that with comms being, communications information being like the highest on the list, just saying it's such an important issue that we need to be keeping that contact. Sorry, Karen, you were going to respond to something.
That's all right. With regard to that, the communication side, we are very aware that customers are becoming more expectant of instant response today, in today's times, with text messaging, instant messaging, email, and that is something we're focused, we're learning on, is around managing the customer expectations for response. So we are encouraging officers. We've done it within children's services. Obviously, we'll be looking more broadly across the rest of the council as well, in terms of making them more aware of the customer expectations, and just managing that by telling customers clearly when they can expect the next communication and how that communication will come through, and sticking to those timeframes. So it isn't, so customers, yes, they may expect an instant response, but sometimes we can't manage that. So it's about managing that expectation from the outset. So we are very aware of that, and ever-changing technology puts further demands on services in that sort of sense. And just in terms of the getting back to people, and the new system we've been talking about here is going to be far more responsive, not only in terms of the communication side of things, but with the reporting side, a lot of it's going to be automated once we've actually got it set up. So the whole quarterly reporting system, we are going to have automated reports built in as well, so that if Graham needs a report for his QPAG meeting, we should be able to have that automated for him to receive as an automated side of things. Yes, I may have to go along and explain some of it, but a lot more of it will be automated through this new system. So
I know about setting expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times I wake up to a message at 6:30 saying, why didn't you respond to my message last night? Well, because he sent it to us past 12 when I was asleep, and that's what. When you're talking about compliments, I'm really pleased that you've got compliments in here, because from working in that industry in the past, people were very keen to get in touch with a complaint, but the number of people that actually rang up to say thank you was almost non-existent. So to see that in here is a massive bonus, and for you to feed that back on an individual basis as well is a big boost to those individuals.
Very good
and
point, that.
one more thing I just wanted to pick up on is something Graham mentioned, and it's with regards to like a corporate complaint sort of thing. I just want to ask, do you do individual monitoring of people? So I'm going to relate this back to contact centre environment, where managers would sort of listen in to calls, that sort of thing, and feedback, for coaching purposes. And on that, you might have some examples that you could feed back, as Graham would say, this is how we deal with these sort of situations, but there might be something just for that individual to say, possibly didn't deal with this.
I'm not directly involved with that side.
Yeah, there's a whole range of ways in which we'd understand the quality of our practice, part of which would be observations or working with, but there's a whole range of other ways that we would understand the impact and effectiveness and where we can improve our practice, and we can always do things better. But as I say, the complaints element is one part of our quality of practice approach, and getting the feedback from them that are the ways which I think the quality of practice framework did come to this meeting probably a couple of meetings ago, presented by our head of quality assurance. The quality of practice so covered detail the range of ways in which we understand and oversee quality assurance practice.
Thank you, Graham.
Yeah, picking up actually what Mark said, you're right. People tend to jump in quickly if they've got a complaint and pull back and say to themselves, actually everything was fine, but didn't report to you. Is there a process where you get feedback from all the service users? In other words, everybody you deal with, do they have an opportunity to give feedback? And then you've got a more balanced opportunity to get compliments as well as accept that you're going to get the complaints. And are the compliments always qualitative? In other words, the large paragraphs. Or is there an opportunity for to simplify that? In other words, you could end up with a numerical. Actually, 75% of our customer users said the service was very good. Because I think it's so important, picking up what Mark was saying, that your staff feel valued, they get positive feedback, they think, God, it's actually been worthwhile. It's everybody feels good. Whereas the negative side of things can wear people down. And I've said before, it approved me when he did the feedback. It's frustrating that you call yourselves the complaints department because 50% of you want the compliments. And I just think the name itself is a touch of negativity.
We're actually called the client relations team.
Right.
My job title is complaints manager.
Right. That's
Yes, so it's a slight difference.
Because I was going to say the whole thing, you just want a little bit of uplift. But I'll just come back to those points of gathering again.
Yeah, we continue to evolve those. We do in certain ways get systematic feedback.
Yeah.
But some of the compliments here are actually stuff that's has been offered to us, for example, by courts. And I've seen one this week where the court have been very complimentary about the quality of the work undertaken by social workers in very difficult court proceedings, for example. So some of those compliments, and we've worked hard to generate a culture that is a positive learning organisation. Yeah. And I'm very keen and will always push for staff to share compliments with me, wherever it comes from. Yeah. And they say systematically getting the compliments is difficult because it's a bit random where they come from. But actually we see more and more of those, and hence we always people are learning to copy caring in now so we can collate those more effectively. In terms of getting feedback from service users more consistent, that's something we're always continuing to evolve and develop. I mean, I've got to say, certainly, particularly with some of our young people, they get a bit of surveying feedback, kind of tiredness, and not another one. So we've got to look at creative ways in which we can do that, particularly with young people. But we have, and again, in our self-assessment, I'll talk with, we had Ofsted who came this week for an engagement. We were very complimentary about our processes for hearing from. We can do a bit better to get the voice of children and people, but I think we've moved a long way to do that more effectively.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions from the floor? Thank you. Thank you very much for that. We'll move on to agenda item 5, virtual school head teachers annual report 2023. Tara will deliver this.
Morning, everybody. I'm Tara Prescott. I'm Deputy Head of Government School. I'm here today on behalf of Penny Walker to talk through her annual report for 22 to 23. It's mostly educating and care for children, but also recognize the duties of the virtual school head teachers, such as promoting education, previous care for children, and children with social worker. There's always, with our virtual school annual report, there's a lot to celebrate about the achievements of the children and of the school, and particularly the exec team as well. There's a lot of detail in the report itself, so I hope you have enjoyed reading it. Just to highlight today some of the key points that's been brought out of it. I'm going to start by following the same theme as the annual report with the highlights. Stable school placements for the majority of children. So again, that is a focus. We do know that children have experienced significant disruption and often mislearning on their journey into care. It's a service we don't actually teach the children. What we do is to make sure that the environment is there to allow them to achieve
So we support that stable learning environment for children. And last year, the majority of our children did experience school stability. There's a chapter in the report about stability, and there's also a lot of good examples of how this does help to support their achievement at a later date. School readiness. Most children were school ready at the age of 5. So we do want our children to be school ready to give them the best start and the greatest chance of success. This isn't always the case with cared for children. They've often experienced delays with speech and language, communication and development. So we have to support them through that. This year, we did see a big improvement on the number of children ready for school in year 1, with over 2/3 of ages 4 to 5-year-olds achieving a good level of development in early years, and this is on page 8 of the report. More pupils achieved strong GCSE passes in English and Maths, and that was a grade 5+. So the virtual school were very ambitious for our children. But like all children achieve at least grade 4 at GCSE in Maths and English. This measure is actually referred to as the basics, and a grade 4 is a pass. In 22 to 23, the majority of pupils who achieved the basics actually achieved 2 grade 5s, which is a strong pass for them, which was brilliant. This, in turn, actually does improve their outcomes or pathways in September, and we saw this in September 2023. More developed offer for post-16 pupils. So last year we did participate in a national pilot that trialled the use of Pupil Premium Plus for children and young people who chose post-16 courses and further education. We used a small amount of grant funding from the pilot to actually develop a role for a post-16 education intervention worker. And we've developed a new APEP placement education plan for pupils at 16 plus. Both of these initiatives have worked incredibly well in the virtual school and with our children, particularly for 17 and 18-year-olds. We've seen a really good impact, and that's on page 26 and 27 of the report. And the post of the intervention worker has been so successful that we've actually been able to make this a permanent post for the high quality education, psychology, OT and support therapies. So in 22 to 23, for psychologists and therapists were in very high demand within schools. We provided training and support to school staff, building capacity so teachers could manage the behaviours of the children more effectively and remain in class. We also provided a lot of one-on-one support for individual children. All of the ESAC team are trained in various therapies, including Thrive, Lego, Drawn and Token, so we are able to offer that whenever we need to without any delay. We also had an occupational therapist with us who was doing a lot of training in the schools around sensory needs to support teachers in settings to make some changes to allow them to support the behaviour as a form of communication and also with the learning environment. We recruited another educational psychologist, which means we could identify any AHDP or SEN needs at an earlier intervention and again refer to assessment if needs be. I had a very diverse training programme and support for all professionals, which included foster carers and our essential staff. On page 10, that will show you a lot of the work we have been doing with the residential homes. Within our children's homes, a very high proportion have HCPs, and gaps in their learning are quite significant. Last year, we did use one of our teachers to actually work with the children's homes, providing a high level of English and Maths tuition and also life skills with this group of children. That's been really effective in school readiness. The relational and trauma-informed approach. So this was an initiative that's made from the work of the education of all children with social worker. Having schools and professionals from all agencies that are working with children attachment and trauma-informed transforms how we engage with young people and how we then support them with education and post-16 again. And the Relationships Matters conference that launched the initiative last March, we are following that up this year with Relationships Still Matter. We're doing it to schools on one day, and we're also supporting that with social care staff support and education the following day to really have a wrap-around holistic approach from Northumberland to all professionals. Challenges. So we are very positive in the virtual school, but we are aware we've had a lot of challenges as well. We're realistic about the significant challenges that we've had in the children in care face in education, but also the professionals face when trying to support this group of children. So while we did have stable school places for the majority of our children, we did have some that did experience instability. So this is an area we are going to continue to develop this year. We are continuously working with health professionals, family placement and care teams to really see what we can do to make a difference to the stability of children. Academic progress from age 6 to age 11 and from age 12 to 16. So achievement is improving for 11-year-olds to 16-year-olds. However, what we do know and what the data is telling us is if more pupils have made progress from the end of the early years to the end of primary school, then throughout secondary, even more children would be achieving well and the opportunities would be greater when they're entering adulthood. We monitor the progress of every child in care on a daily basis, whether they're in Northumberland or in a school out of Northumberland, and we do some rigorous, robust sort of monitoring around that to support the schools and to support the young people to make sure that they fulfil their potential. Again, I've highlighted some of the experience on education of children in residential homes and the resourcing that's gone in last year. And we are going to continue this throughout this academic year as well. And while it does remain a challenge, but we're really confident with ourselves and the residential homes that we are making that difference now for this group of children. We also know that more teenagers are entering care with unidentified additional needs. Older children that have maybe been permanently excluded prior to entering care. So again, they have a lot of disruptions and unmet needs. So we are working closely with this group of young people to support. A lot of it is to do with the training in schools and along the relationships to really support their education moving forward. And the ESLAC team is working closely with schools. We're also part of the legal gateway process, so we are aware of these children prior to entering care. So again, we can really get the support in as quick as possible to avoid any delay. So our next steps from the virtual school. The annual report is an evaluation of the achievement of the children and the impact of the service. And our steps are clearly identified within the annual report and also within our virtual school improvement plan for 23 to 24. We're halfway through this academic year already, so we've really started to sort of take on board all of the challenges and the support that we need to do. And where we're up to now is they're all about accelerating academic progress, which we've already highlighted, and the support that we are there. We are working to improve attendance. There's more details about the approach we're using for attendance on page 17. This involves the attendance strategy within Northumberland, and we work very closely. The education welfare team is part of the virtual school. So we have that really direct working with the team to support the attendance of children. Alternative suspensions, we are working with schools to look at what we can do as an alternative to suspending the pupil to really keep them in school and again maintain their progress. Strengthening corporate parents, local authority services and partner agencies. Asking everybody that we're working with and everybody we're involved, would this be good enough if it was your child? Better understanding the experience of cared for children with SEND, a focus on improving emotional and mental health and wellbeing, improving engagement and education training and employment for care leavers aged 19 to 21, and also preparing for the new virtual school duties. So from September 24, we'll have a new broader duty to promote the education of children in kinship care and provide support to care leavers and repaid in education, employment training up until the age of 25. Do you have any questions?
Yes.
So, thank you for the report. It's really good. Is this service only offered to cared for children?
Yes, but cared for children and previously cared for children, the virtual school. So we work with children in care up until the age that they're going to age the age of 25 and care leavers, and also previously cared for children. We have oversight, but our duties will extend from September 2024.
Because we do have children who have special educational needs that are excluded from schools in Northumberland. So I just wondered why it was only on children.
But that's the remit of the virtual school. So the virtual school head is to support children in care, or those that have previously cared for. Do you mean, sorry, the cared for children that have been excluded?
No, children that have an AHCP that are excluded from school.
Yeah, but that'll come under a bit of a different remit from the virtual.
So the virtual school is very specific, and that is a statutory function for our cared for. That's why we have our inclusive education service, so that the team that Mike runs, and also the additional team that Sue runs, particularly around alternative provision. So they work really closely together to make sure that we've got provision across the board, and we do have on rare occasions. It's been some while since we've had a child excluded, but we have our whole network around education, SEND and skills to be able to support that, and we link directly in with virtual school.
Graham, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think we've got a unique model for our virtual school here in Northumberland. The primary function and the primary responsibilities around the education for cared for children and formerly cared for children care leaves. That's a primary responsibility here, but we do have, and the responsibilities for the virtual school have broadened over time. So now responsible for the education for children who've had a social worker, not just those who are cared for. But again, that wouldn't be the same level of the support that is required for cared for children. So there'll be individual support offered around the cared for children, but the broader responsibilities around supporting schools, around the education for children who've had a social worker, i.e. more vulnerable children, that is much more about training, development and supporting schools in that. And as Tara says, there's further responsibilities coming this autumn to the virtual school to support children who are cared for in kinship care around that. So the broadening, but equally our virtual school has got a wider responsibility around children missing education and making sure that the vulnerabilities there are tracked and that they are not at undue risk and that we can respond to that as well. So it's a unique model here that I think is a real strength for us in Northumberland, joining all those pieces, particularly around safeguarding and vulnerability, but equally the statutory requirements around reporting particularly are around the cared for children and their education.
Yeah, it's just, I was really pleased to read the report and, you know, something that would be looked at in the future to expand this service, because we do have children that have the same issues of sensory needs in the classroom that would benefit from this without being a cared for child. I think it's a really good report and I like it.
Thank you. Yes, agreed. Councillor Ward, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the section about absences, and you can see there's an increase this year. And the top 10 reasons, there's some things in there that, you know, completely unavoidable, loss of a parent. I don't think there's a lot can be done about those kind of things, but the number one reason is the unflexible school behavioural policies. I'm wondering if that's linked in with kind of unmet SEND needs and behavioural support plans not being compatible with the policies, but as well, that's something that surely can be changed to kind of decrease those absences going forward. Just want to hear a bit about that, really.
Yeah, and that links perfectly in with the relational training that we are doing with schools. So we are delivering with behaviour and policies in school, making them more trauma informed and relational rather than being more on the behavioural side. And a lot of it's linked into a motor-based school avoidance as well. So we have that barrier still, but we are working with schools and it's been a brilliant start. I mean, we're actually in a really good starting point within Northumberland with our schools. So we're actually really starting to develop that further and identify exactly what the needs are and where we can be a bit more flexible and make some reasonable adjustments with the behaviours, with the guidance within schools. Some of the difficulties because it's academized. So we're working with the academies as a whole and this trust as a whole, and we are starting to do some really good work, yeah, and the schools are really on board with it. So we're at the start of a journey, but we're definitely making some impact.
Thank you. Excellent. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. So this is the second time I've seen this report this week, but I've got some new questions for you.
You do surprise us.
Well, I like to be thorough, that's what I'm here for. So when you come onto the first page, you've got 62 attendant schools in other areas. Northumberland is a county we've invested heavily in education over the past few years. Is the direction of travel, is that going to be coming down? Why are there so many still attending out of the local authority, outside of like the schools, and just the cost implications of that? Because if they're out of area, they are going to be, and I know it's not in this report, but I would like to see some of that in there because I think it is that joined up of that whole service that we are providing. Then when we go in again around the challenges, I do have my thing is you're doing fantastic work. Northumberland is massive. So if you've got, how many educational psychologists have we got for the whole of the county? How many intervention work that you've taken on that? We've got from Berwick to Hexham, Tyne Valley. And if you've got one person, they're going to spend more days travelling than what they are actually working with people. So I think the service is great. I think you are doing fantastic work. The direction of travel overall for the cared for children is in the right direction. There's not enough of you. But how do we link up some of them strategies? I know we've got the attendance task and finish group that we're looking at overall, But I think if we can also look at some of the learning from what you've done already, because I know you're seeing a lot of the schools in Northumberland, the banners popping up about attendance. That's all well and good, but also that extra support that's needed to help the parents to get the young people, because there might be the trauma or other things that are going on, which again are not available because it's not a looked after child. So I think there's some great learning to come from what you've done. I would love to see more of you, and I'd like to understand actually how many staff are working out in, like, to be able to help these young people get back into school as well.
I'm going to let Graham start answering that one, then Tara, if you can come back.
I think it's you want to call as well. Sorry, just on the out of authority placements, that's linked to the debate we had yesterday at Corporate Page around sufficiency of placements as well, in terms of that. And whenever we have to make a placement move for a child, then clearly the consideration of the education implications for that is key part of the planning. And as Tara said, we have what's called a legal gateway panel, which makes at a very senior level when decisions for when children are going to become cared for which the virtual school are part of that. So they're cited on children who might become cared for at the earliest possible time, and if there are then key moves in that. But again, part of the reason for placement instability or the moves out of authority is because we have children placed outside of the authority. And a lot of the time that'll be for the right reasons for them, but equally sometimes that'll be because that's the only place we can find for that sort of reflecting the conversation we had. I will say though, we have got more children than most comparators within 20 miles of their home address, cared for children. So things like something like 65% of our children are within 20 miles of their home address. I think the national average on that is 40% or something. So I think even given the geography of Northumberland, that is a real achievement, but equally not good enough for us. We'd want it to be much better. And that would then link to the education requirements for those young people.
Where possible, we do try to keep the school as stable back then. Yeah. So we would always try and do that, and any decisions are made by a care team in the best interest of the individual child before we would look at a school move to keep that consistency. In regarding the challenges, we do have a lot of challenges which we're aware of. We only have 1.8 EP support. And that's because there's a national shortage for the EPs recruiting. So we always try and recruit with that. We've got 2 fantastic members of staff, but it's only 2 that, as you say, are covering all of the authority. And they are in incredibly high demand, and schools do want them in. But I will say the training that we do for designated teachers is cascaded and shared with all staff. So for all we go in to support the training with designated people and designated safeguarding teachers for cared for children, they can take all of that learning and share it with all staff. And we would encourage them to do so in all aspects of the training we do. And our training is open to all school staff as well. So there is that side with the training, which would hopefully really embed that within schools. And around the challenges with the attendance, there's a lot of information in the report of what we are going to try to do. But again, we work incredibly close with education welfare because they're one of our teams. We do have children that are tracked by the tracking panel for safeguarding. We work with foster carers, residential homes, and the schools as well. So we really are coming up with that sort of holistic approach. And the relational conference that we do have, the first day is aimed at school staff. The second day is aimed at support staff within the local authorities. Actually, this doesn't just stop at the school gates. What can we all do to really support that? So it's very much based on the relationships with children as well.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor?
Again, picking up on the attendance, it runs through the report like a stick of rock, really, you know, that word attendance. And the frightening thing is that if you have a child not attending school, then straight away their ability to achieve is severely limited. And what appeared when I read the report was that you're actually on the slide from the previous year for attendance. Now, I know you said there's positives or green shoots appearing this year, but what worries me is that you're talking about an absence level of 64%. Is that right?
Yeah, sorry, I'll have to check the date.
Now, that is frighteningly low. And your number of persistent absences is alarming, really. Therefore, the outcomes of those children are going to be severely limited. So is therefore the real, I mean, I know you've got that at the end there. You've said one of the main challenges is attendance, and that, how are you going to address it? But what strategies have you got in place that would significantly change? Because in a way, if you're trying to turn this like an oil tanker, your ability for those children to succeed is going to be limited, because obviously it's a time factor. Some of these children are in GCSEs and or Key Stage 2 SATs and so on. So are more resources being put into that key issue of attendance that hopefully will benefit them when they're in school and hopefully achieve?
Yeah, we have invested in the education welfare team and increased capacity within education welfare to support attendance, but also our team has grown this year as well. So we do have that ability to really support it in early intervention. And again, linking straight in when the children do enter care, when they are already in pay or if they're in SA, it takes a while for them to come out. So they may still be in pay, however, they are making progress in centre and care. So this is the trajectory that we're working on as well. It just can sometimes take a while to get out of the pay.
I know.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important that the committee remembers this is a cohort of our children in Northumberland. Excuse me, so it's not all of our children with the 64%.
No, I know it's just the virtual school, obviously. Yes, I fully accept that.
Great, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And from an educational psychologist perspective, this is the team that rests within the virtual school only. So there is a much wider team that supports school across the whole county as well.
Yeah,
Just one other thing to just think about what we, in terms of supporting our cared for children, we've got what's called the Northumberland Emotional Wellbeing and Support Team. I think that's an innovative service. It's primary mental health workers with a psychologist, and we're focusing those on supporting the work with our cared for children to understand their needs better, the care team working around them, how they can support them. So that's an additional resource which will be focusing on those young people most vulnerable of our cared for cohort.
Thank you, Chair. And both Councillor Waddell and Mr Hodgson, I know have brought this up about the attendance issue. And now we've got a task and finish group on attendance because we have suffered since the pandemic, and that's overall. And as Councillor Ball's already mentioned, you go around, we've got the big banners outside school because we're trying to generate that desire to get the children back into school. When we look at those top 10 reasons, these are some of the most vulnerable children we've got in Northumberland, and 2 to 10 on there, I'm going to say bad enough, reasons for them not to attend. But number one, inflexible school behaviour policies. And I appreciate you said that working with schools, but inflexible school behaviour policies for our looked after children should not be number one on that list. And I'm quite shocked to see that there. I'm not saying it shouldn't be in the list, but from my perspective, it should not be number one as to why our looked after children are not attending school. And, the fact that we're working on it and we're working with schools, and as you mentioned, we have to work with academies to try and change that attitude as well, is great. But from my perspective, and this is my own opinion, we shouldn't have to be doing that. And that should not be number one. So, I mean, I've been on this committee now, this is year 7, and I've seen a number of these reports. And to see this there, this has really jumped out at me this year. And I'm quite shocked and disappointed to see that as the number one reason why our looked after children have got poor attendance. So, the quicker we can make headway into changing this inflexibility in some of our schools, because I'm assuming it is not all schools, and I would hazard a guess that you could probably just plot certain ones, and I don't know which ones they are. But the sooner we can make some headway into improving that, would make a significant benefit for these looked after children. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and I hope that these schools can make a turnaround sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Anybody want to add anything or any last questions? No, thank you. We'll move on to addendum 6. That's inequalities, poverty and partnership plan. This will be delivered by Emma.
Usually I've got some slides and that's just because it's quite a chunky report. So we thought it would be helpful. Down just like that along, yeah, it is. Don't worry about reading it so much, it's more to keep me focused than anything else. So thanks for having me here, Emma Richardson. I'm poverty lead for NCC, and the poverty and hardship plan actually fits as part of the wider inequalities plan, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but it has quite a lot of input around children and young people. I'm based in children's services and it is what gets me out of bed in the morning. So it's really important to pull that forward and have a closer look at that in itself. Just for context, as I've just said, it's part of the wider inequalities plan. The focus of it in terms of hardship support, you'll be familiar with Household Support Fund and best use for the grants, mitigating the impact of poverty and the cost of living on children and young people, and also building that resilience. So trying to move away from just hardship support to see how do we build it differently going forward. So there's prevention, resilience and local community resilience, all those things that were stretched for. I've also popped the governance on there just because obviously coming to this group to see how that fits. We've got a cross-directorate and cross-sector monitoring and planning group, and we report through to the cross-party members group for inequalities and then on to Health and Wellbeing Board. But because this money is also associated with Section 256 money from the, not funny money from the Integrated Care Board, it also reports in there. So it's quite a visible plan, which is helpful for us, as some of the messages that come out of it are really important. The most important thing, I think, for underpinning all of this is that we work with the knowledge that we've got across, we've listened to data, lots of data, but across the council and across our partnerships, we've got a lot of access to good information and data that tells us the things that give us the concern. So we should know confidently what to do with grants and opportunities that come to us. Like, for example, the Household Support Fund. I've specifically put the low income family tracker on there. This is a new tool that we have. And actually kind of at household level identify families that are in crisis, in deficit budget, that are managing, which really helps us to design our household support fund, our Eat, Sleep, Play, Learn funding, which is directly for education partners to access a lot of these little things that are difficult to fund that can actually make a difference to whether a child goes to school, to whether a child engages with early years and so on. I've put the detail of the Household Support Fund on the last monitoring report. That does get updated again. Obviously, you'll know we're coming to the end of that at the end of March. But it gives you a sense that the majority of the award actually does sit with children and young people. Coupled with that, the energy support, which is of course to do with children and people as well, because we want them warm in their own houses. So advice and support. And again, as I say, pulling this forward to be children and young people, it would have been easy just to focus on that section of it in terms of what are we doing directly with that. But that, children live in households where there's incomes, where there's issues, where all of these bits. So I felt, even though, like I say, it's a bit meaty, it was important to include it. So citizens' advice in Northumberland, as you've mentioned, our geography is a challenge. So having advice in place, we need different kinds of models. So we have what's called community advice, where we upskill people who are in places to really access the early citizens' advice casebook system, so we can get that support. And we've done that at the school gate in partnership with North of Tyne, but also off our own back. And in the last 6 months in primary care, and you'll see that equates to £500,000 in gains for our families, which is incredible. And that's about debt management as well as entitlements. The financial well-being, we've set away, we've got a lot of people doing lots of things. How do we draw that together so it's seamless and easy for our families to be able to access, and indeed our children? We work to the Money and Pensions Service toolkit for that. And in 2024, we'll be focusing on the financial education, pulling that forward to see what does this do, how can we make it work. And we hear all the time about, the money, cash, children don't understand where money come from, they just use their cards and so on. I'm not convinced that is the case, but we're going to get underneath that and see what we've got and understand what perhaps we need to do. We've got Northumberland Frontline, which is an app in partnership with the Integrated Care Board again, and our VCSE support contract Thriving Together, which has got all kinds of different supports that are largely community, but also our family hubs and others. And you can make a direct connection with them either as a resident or as a professional partner. And it's got a catch-all. If somebody hasn't gotten in touch with, you're let know in 9 days, I think it is, or something like that, which is great. And we're actually seeing that organically grow, which is that we're talking about where children are, where families are, what are they involved with, and there's a whole tapestry in where they live and in their community and all the rest of it. And we really want to make sure that they're accessing all of those fabulous things that are available to them. I mentioned the Energy Pathway and Pathway Plus. And that's literally a direct line for energy support. It includes crisis and debt support, but on top of that, support and prevention in terms of coming out, home visits for targeted cohorts, including our larger families, to do some simple measures. The foil behind radiators perpetually fascinate me. All of those things that actually can make a big difference to heating bills. And we work with Community Action Northumberland and Citizens Advice to do that. I've mentioned that the information support, relationships, community advice, that curation of it, we know there's so much stuff going on. So as we prioritise it, using our data, using what we're learning, use phoning up, what's going on, what are we hearing? How do we then work really hard to pull the right information that is reliable? Because our role as an anchor organisation, we are trusted. And with when we have our branding on stuff, people say, well, that must be reliable information, which is great. And then how do we make sure that that's in situ where we need it? And that also our partners, so in things like our warm spaces, our toddler groups, our earlier settings, that they are able to navigate that information and say, oh, there's this as well, because we know that is what makes a difference in how people live their lives and how we get to meet them sooner, isn't it, rather than having them forever travelling the threshold service. Obviously, we have a web space with that, and Make Every Contact Count, Financial Wellbeing Officer, Alison. And to, Sarah, not Alison, I always call her Alison, I don't know why, Sarah, her name is. But again, going back to that point about data, it's about being directive. Where is it that Sarah needs to be present, having those conversations? How do we use our data and our knowledge how do we make sure that our advice at the school gates is at the schools where we really want to be making that inroad, using that information as well that we've got. Obviously, we still have high demand for charitable support and food support. And we do use Household Support Fund for that, but we also work with our community partner providers, and we've invested quite a lot in different pilot activities to find alternative solutions to the food parcels and the food banks, and really, working with our communities who are the point of contact for that to see how can we do this a bit differently. That's very challenging, but does at the bottom of that, you'll see we're working on a Northumberland food strategy at the moment, which is that farm to fork, and that does include food security. And I have to say, really, Gemma, who leads on that work, is really working hard with us to understand what works in Northumberland and how we move on, because we do know that hardship food support, it widens inequalities, and we need to get underneath that and get around that differently. The holiday voucher support comes from the Household Support Fund for our free school meal children. We continue that in Northumberland without question. Actually, it's wider than that. It includes our care leavers, it includes children with our 2-year-old offer, and also with the discretionary part of it that's managed through Northumberland Communities Together, means that people actually can be connected to a wide kind of support and information, as well as perhaps an entitlements check. You may have seen that we've got £2.3 billion in unclaimed benefits in the North East of England. So benefits checks and everything, it's always worthwhile for us to just spend a bit of time with that. But also just making sure that, because the other thing is when you're in touch with families in this kind of a space, you have different conversations, and it's really important that those insights and that knowledge can feed through into service and service design. So what are we hearing in the universal spaces? What are we hearing when somebody phones to ask for a top up about their energy, and how do we help that us learn going forward to make sure that our services are at the earliest point, and all of the support around that. We are looking in 2024, the free school meal auto enrolment. There's a lot of noise around this in different places. And it deliberately to 2024 because it's not so straightforward. There's privacy notices involved in that. There's also the fact that we don't have responsibility for all our schools, although it is quite complicated, but we're part of that conversation. Okay. So A big part of the poverty and hardship plan is the children, young people starting and growing up well, and really acknowledging some of the points made is that what is around the lives, and a lot of this work is about seeding in that universal space, but being targeted with what we do. So it's framed under seeing and access those opportunities for future success, because sadly we know sometimes children say no to things, or things don't feel accessible to them because of financial constraints, or so it's about what can we do to kind of remove some of those barriers going forward. And it is complementing also the North of Tyne Child Poverty Programme, which will pass over into the Northeast Mayoral Combined Authority Programme. So making sure that that's meaningful and relevant for Northumberland, and that our children are represented properly on that. I mentioned the Eat, Sleep, Play, Learn Fund. It's literally funding for anything that gets in the way of eating, sleeping, playing and learning is open for our education partners to make that referral. That includes our holiday activity and food programme partners. It's really interesting. There's things like uniform comes through, beds come through, but just in terms of when you're saying about the compliments, the conversations that flow from that are really interesting and insightful as well. And as I say, they help us frame what we're trying to do going forward. Can't go without mentioning the holiday activity and food programme. That funding obviously doesn't come through public health. That's a national policy. Northumberland's is a community-led programme. I strategically lead it, and we've got an officer who works with our communities to do that. You can see I got the final data from them yesterday. The numbers are quite incredible, 178 camps, and it really is a successful model for us in Northumberland. And a part of that is because we've got a young leaders programme that adds to that workforce. Now, what's interesting for this year is we're looking to see how do we accredit that young leaders programme across all of the different partners, doing that through the Children and People's Network, so that you're giving them something meaningful. So if they apply for a job in Sussex, the thing that they've got is recognised elsewhere, and making sure we're tying that together with real skills and valuable, because it's real proper work, and we want that to be seen. And they do allow us, particularly our HAF is really inclusive. It largely has a zero exclusion policy, and the way we're able to do that is by working closely with partners through the family hubs, through education and others who can support the hyper-local organisations who run the camps, the local community organisations, to ensure that they have a quality assured offer for children, and the young leaders working to that allows better ratios to just put some support. All of those little things, when we lean in together and lever our work in together and our resources together, we get more value and a better impact. So that's half. There are some other education. These education colleagues were invited to put proposals to see how they would think, how we could mitigate poverty, what could make the difference, as well as having the hardship funding. And there's a few really interesting bits and pieces. Obviously, some support to learn programmes in lots of different schools, whether that be a particularly licensed school. There's rooms that they wanted set away where children get some downtime and do, educators identifying that. And also some innovative activities around food and learning, which kind of also ties back to that food strategy and where our children and young people in the food space, because we know they absolutely have agency there. But we're not quite sure what that means in terms of attendance for school and other things. But we know that lunches do influence when children attend, which is a really interesting concept. And we could have a little closer look at that by seeding a little bit of funding. Global Bridge, which is a CV builder tool for children and young people who maybe have alternative skills. And the family support role, which is just a little bit of extra capacity to our education colleagues. And some of the questions that came up around, what if somebody's in this space? What if somebody's in that space? And that's literally where it is. So the best example I gave is a family who are in emergency accommodation because of domestic abuse. And rightly, parent is dealing with all of the things that need to be dealt with. And there's sometimes a period of absences, the child has to relocate. And so how do we handhold the child through that process to minimise the absence and the disruption while the parent is obviously dealing with the trauma? And also around, if financial insecurity is in the way, and just understanding what's the loss of traction in education. And it's interesting, I just got a report yesterday And the worker who's doing that piece of work, she's working with 27 different children and young people and has most of them back involved in school. And really interesting, one of them's got younger siblings now engaging in an early years setting as well. And it is that really bespoke working that we're able to feed in knowledge into the core teams who do this. So, oh, this works really well, and just testing little different bits of work. I mentioned the early years planning. Obviously, you'll know the different policies coming in terms of early years provision, and just ensuring that we don't accidentally disadvantage families just either because of geography and availability of places or because of income thresholds, and just that we're making sure we've got that inequalities lens across that planning. And I have to say the early years team are superb with that. So community resilience, I mentioned making sure that good information is there. I mentioned make every contact count, community embedded capacity. Really, this is about mobilising workforces in a different way with good partnership information and what we're doing and what we're trying to do, and sharing those objectives and outcomes and ambitions that we've got for our children and young people, and deploying our resource into those spaces. So particularly I'll pull out the rural advocate worker, Leslie, who is based in Wooler, and doing really a lot of work in kind of understanding what we need to understand about rural life to ensure that it's appropriately represented in policy. And that includes children who commute long times and all of these things. And just hearing that so we can ensure what comes forward either regionally, nationally or locally is fit for all of our children and young people and all of our families and residents. The Reading for Wellbeing work, where we have reading coaches. Again, it's about what do we really need them to do, and what are the reading groups? That there's the discharge from hospital stuff. Yes, that's great. There's the isolation stuff. Yes, that's great. But can they add capacity into our libraries and into our school libraries to do the rhyme times and things like that with early years? And absolutely, yes, they can. And how do we make that into a train the trainer model that can perhaps make some inroads into that kind of work in that tapestry of children's life? And I've mentioned significant partnership working. As I say, it's really about making sure that we are representing ourselves fully and well to best effect with all of the resources we've got available to us, to ensure that we're not leaving people behind. And that does come from listening, co-design and all of those other things that, I take really seriously in my role, to listen and feedback to all of the different colleagues that I work with, what we're hearing, what we're seeing and where those opportunities are. And then summarise, so it is inequalities plan wider is, to keep residents safe and well in terms of those pressures, but also to prevent that further widening of that inequalities gap, and to be building resilience, community resilience, service resilience, and it's not just household resilience. This is about how we, our whole social tapestry, and those seed and learn pilots, which allow us to kind of just continue that learning and add value to colleagues' conversations in different parts of the council and the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll start by making one very quick point. The camps are fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. The amount of feedback that we get from residents, I popped into a few myself to see how things were going and just get the general feedback from the kids as well. And they're just great. Everybody loves them. So well done on that, because they delivered just so well. They really hit the spot, so to speak. And you should be really, really proud of delivering them, because they are so good. I will now go on to take questions from the floor.
I was going to say, if you want to start at that side, because I'm
sure.
This is huge.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, more of this, please. To address inequalities, like Councillor Chicken says, we're quite lucky in Hexham. We've got some great youth organisations that work with you and provide those camps, and the fabulous Hexham Youth for One, among many others. But they're full and they're booked out, and you can't get your name down on them. And I'm sure that's about resources and money, but more of this, please. My big worry in relation to sort of children's health inequalities is obstacles to that. And what I've seen over the last few years is certainly removal of pitches and playing fields in local areas being key to that lack of sort of health inequality, where we used to sort of practice our roller skating or learn how to ride our bike. It's now shut off with big fencing. And that I find a problem. And I wonder if that could be more addressed with sort of community agreements with academies and schools in this plan. The other thing relating to that is as well our leisure centres, which are now obviously going to be taken over by Places and Peoples. And I think that's a great opportunity to get talking to them about, for example, child swimming. Those school swimming classes were coming from Kielder and Wark down to the Wentworth to use those. That's a massive commute for them for like, I think, 45 minutes in the pool plus changing. So that's something I would like looking at with Places and Peoples, along with, if possible, the booking systems, because I think once you put an obstacle in the way of a child, dropping into the local leisure centre and making a habit of being healthy and active continuously, not just in the holiday time, it's a huge barrier to get those kids to book a space. And I'm wondering if that system can be looked at, because I think it's inequalities for older people as well as younger people, just being able to use their leisure centre really easily and getting that benefit that we know we can get through our partners. I'm just wondering.
Absolutely. In terms of the leisure contract, I mean, it's interesting having people in places, obviously with the scope of their organisation, and they are a key partner, particularly in HAF and the Holiday Activity and Food Programme. Right. So there are the camps, and then there are bookable activities that are done through our same booking system. So I think there's absolutely scope for these conversations, and in terms of opening. I was at a school that DFE actually doing a different kind of visit, and they commented on the fence and how children can access it and where did it, just the same kind of comment. And I think the funding that comes down to the community sports partnerships. So for us, that's RISE is very much about opening schools as community assets. And I think we probably need to pull some best practice forward to show the value of that, because we know that that affords good outcomes.
Yeah,
the different level. Yeah,
we really should be putting that in those community agreements into place for those children to be able to best use those facilities and make the best of their health inequalities. Yeah, for their learners.
I'll just second what was said there, because it was raised yesterday, on Tuesday in the Health and Wellbeing meeting about the booking system, putting a lot of people off in the leisure centres. And it's not just the elderly who don't know how to do this. It's also people who maybe suffer from dyslexia, people who really just don't read very well, or actually don't have the facility to do that. If that could be looked at, I think you would see an increase in people coming up, but that has been raised in another committee, so it isn't just the people in this room. Is there anybody else on this side? Yes, Mr.
Yeah, just let's go back to that mitigating poverty in an education setting. 6 months ago, I was inspecting schools across South Africa. And that involved working in some of the townships. Now, I know we're talking about context here, and that, but you're talking about a level of poverty that we can't even get our heads around. The basic wage is about $120 an hour. Their average yearly salary is about $2,500. But this is the point I'm going to make. In those townships, there are schools that the parents are prepared to pay £400 per child out of that salary because they see the value of education. And those children, many of them girls, which again is significant, are starting to break through the glass ceiling. I actually went into a school which was no more than a shed. And they took me to, in inverted commas, their science lab, which actually only had a sink. That was their science lab. They were doing the Cambridge University A-levels, and those students were actually getting into the prestigious University of Stellenbosch, University of Cape Town, University of Johannesburg. But the message was loud and clear. The parents and the schools were singing from the same song sheet. The value of education was going to get those children out of that cycle of poverty and get them on the ladder to prosperity, jobs, their future. Many of those parents were illiterate. The vast majority of them were illiterate. They'd had no education themselves, but they were determined, absolutely determined, to accept that they were in that level of poverty, but their children were going to get out of it. And those children would turn into schools at 7:30 in the morning. They'd leave at 4:30 at night, and they'd turn up at 7:30 on a Saturday morning voluntarily. And if we can, you know, when you, I mean, honestly, it's marvelous what you're doing, and there's so many positives. But if it's what was missing when I was listening to you, then was working. You say working with young children, working with young adults, but it's working with parents. Get those parents to reinforce that message that the schools are enforcing, because if you can work together, families and schools, and get that message to those children there that they have a future, but that future can only be attained through public difference gained at school. Now, I know it's a big ask and all this stuff, but the fact is that around the world, people accept that that is the route out of poverty. And as I say, it's very humbling when you go there and see it, and you see the difference education is actually making, and particularly for girls.
Yeah. And
it is so humbling. So we've got fabulous schools, you know, in Northumberland we've got what 80 or 85% good schools with fantastic resources. We've got fantastic teachers. We've got all the opportunities for those children if we can get the parents on board and just ensure that that message is loud and clear. Education is the route out of poverty.
Can I make one comment? Yeah, I mean, I completely agree in that engagement, and in terms of, you know, specifically to the holiday activities and food and the young leaders, there's a big part of that is about role modelling, and the families are actively involved, the communities are actively involved, but there's absolutely a journey to go on with that, you know, to see the join up, and that's the importance, the role model, see who's there, where we'll all do that, and but it takes time, but you're right, parents are key to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll go over to this side of the room now. Caroline, you wanted to go last. Was there anybody else? Is there anybody else just before I come to you? Anybody? No? Okay. No.
In first. And I'm not sure whether you can answer this. I might be a bit preemptive. So you mentioned up on the slides there about partnership working locally and regionally. And you also mentioned NEMCA. So what we've done here, and I appreciate this is a committee's report, would this remain as an authority programme moving forward? Or is there opportunity to expand with these opportunities and with the upcoming devolution? Or would we look at sharing opportunities regionally or parts of it, or is it just too early to tell at this present time?
So, well, interestingly, a lot of the work, so I sit with the North East Child Poverty Commission, represent Northumberland as an executive, and that means we work quite closely with the child poverty work north of Tyne, and obviously now we can say that that team is moving over. And there's no question there's real across the patch, especially for some of the big programmes like the holiday activity and food programmes and others, the food order, the school auto enrolment, they are regional pieces of work, and absolutely agree that will more likely become a bigger patch where we're part of a piece of work. And that's hence the importance to make sure that Northumberland is appropriately represented in that, so that whatever policy is regional, that it fits. But yeah, I think not all of it, because some of it is quite local, but certainly some of the bigger programmes, it would make sense, you know, for economic reasons to put that in that bigger patch. And I think certainly there's that swell of agreement around the priorities that we see coming forward.
I know many of us met yesterday and discussed the upcoming devolution. And, you know, we did discuss the fact that, you know, we are still our own authorities in our own right and will be. But there's going to be priorities moving forward on a northeast basis, and what we're going to take forward from that, and what we would like to see. And it's not going to be everything just pile in straight away and everything just muddles up. But one of the things that I mentioned was, and we've heard it at this committee so many times, where we've looked at results and how we fared nationally, and then we compare ourselves with other authorities in the northeast. And what I would like to see is, why can't we might be up here with our results? Why can't the rest of the northeast be up here as well, and we just be, you know, education results, etc., be so great in the Northeast, across the Northeast, and share our experiences and how can we all do well in the Northeast, and the rest of the country look and say, how come they're doing so great up there?
Yeah.
You know, rather than just Northumberland, the whole of the Northeast, and really shine in our area, because we all know it's fantastic up here. But everyone else needs to recognise it as well. So, but that's.
So just to respond on that one, actually, there is a huge opportunity, particularly around NEMCA with the Trailblazer opportunity. And to give members of the committee some assurance, we've been involved in those discussions, so particularly around not just inequalities, but poverty projects specifically. There have been lots of discussions. There is a really good project that I think 30 of our schools have already benefited from. We'd want to extend that moving forward and continue that work to even further, go even further and do even more. But certainly to give some assurance that Northumberland needs to make sure that our place and our position is adequately addressed from our perspective. So we know our localities best, and we wouldn't want to lose that. We'd want to make sure that was a really strong voice. But collectively, we've got a huge opportunity across the region.
Great, thank you.
It's now so.
I'm like conscious of time, but I'm also conscious that you
I'll
want to get
speak quickly then.
everything.
Right then, so I am a child that was brought up in poverty. I was on free school meals on pretty much every statistic within this report, and because of that, book the trends. My mum sacrificed so much for me to be able to be in the position where I am today, and I thank her for that. But a lot has not changed since I was that kid with my yellow school ticket to get my free school meal. That was mocked by everybody else because I was one of the handful of people that was on free school meals. So as much as I appreciate all the work that's happening, why hasn't it changed in too many years and I care to remember, is housing. We are responsible for like some of our housing providers in the county. In the minimum standards of housing, it's all well and good that we've got schemes to deliver on energy, but actually that doesn't make any difference if the windows are rattling and you can have the best heating system in the world, but because we're not knuckling down on stuff like that. And minimum standards need to raise, because just because you're hitting the lowest bar doesn't mean that it's anywhere near good, because we know for a fact if you're not sleeping properly, if you're not getting the right food, it has an impact on your attendance, it has an impact on how healthy you're going to be, your life expectancy. So if we can't put pressure on the things that we can control, we can have like schemes till they're done to death. It's not going to make any changes if we can't change them core things. We've seen mapping. It's easier to get funding for mapping in consultation than what is to actually do something about the things that are raised in these mapping exercises that we've done. The map that come up before, amazing. The southeast corner is so well catered from the HAP fund. But again, we've got them rural communities, and if you haven't got the community groups, what happens in them rural communities? Do them kids just go hungry? I know I've raised it with you about some of the language that's used.
Yes.
Because the thing is, people don't want to be in poverty. There's a lot of hidden poverty right the way across the UK. There was a documentary, Darren McGarvey, he wrote the book Poverty Safari, and he's going around the world talking to different people. And he's talking to like 11-year-old girl in Finland and about the education system in the UK. And she can't get her head around the fact that we don't have universal free school meals and we'll have school uniforms and like some of the barriers to education that are just removed in Finland. And you know what is, teachers in this country are doing great work, but it's like Mrs. Young in my middle school, if it wasn't for her being able to have that little bit of extra time and support, but we teachers shouldn't have to be social workers, benefits advisors, running the whole day activity club, like identifying people that are really struggling. And then on top of that, we've got schemes where you're poverty proof in schools, but it's a scheme and a tick box exercise, and I hate nothing more than tokenism, and the schools are trying the best, but then in the next breath, you have to have the branded uniform to be on the rugby team. how are you ever going to excel and be an England player if you can't afford to buy a top to play rugby for your school? And we're still seeing these things. Audrey knows, Emma, you know, school uniform is, we've had policies and acts that have changed and people are still can't afford to buy a blazer. So we're sat here years down the line since I had my yellow ticket in Hayes Park Middle School, or when I went on Ash High and I couldn't go out with my friends at lunchtime, and we're still seeing the same thing. Finland, Brazil, Rwanda are providing free school meals at lunchtime. Why aren't we? And it needs to be a universal offer, because the long-term health implications actually will pay for itself long-term, because then people will have high retainment, they'll earn more money and they'll end up paying more taxes, whether they like it or not, back into the system that actually will fund better education and get people out of poverty. So it's great. I love the work that you're doing, but I just think we need to get upstream and some of that learning. Run over.
I haven't got a button today.
I think first of all, free school meals, in terms of the numbers and the value of this investment, that wouldn't cover the cost of putting universal free school meals into Northumberland.
Long term, spend the same.
So, and the other thing with regards to the warm homes, I absolutely agree. And just to be clear, the energy pathway is about moderations, adaptations, and things that need to be to make a house warm, whatever that means. And I guess as well with regards to half and where that can happen, or where that places get fully booked, hence having the activities and the family days to add that capacity. But we do pop-up programming. It is weighted to need, so it's led by the data in terms of the free school meal data. Although in Northumberland we did secure additional funding for discretionary places. So where there's children who are entitled to half provision, we will make sure that there is half provision. But building that capacity, hence building that workforce of young leaders and others, is also some. But they're big problems. I agree. But what's important is that we keep nudging at them and pushing at them and seeing what we are learning. I mean, the free school meals, when we've got absence and everything as well, it's just complicated and hard, hence the need to be part of that bigger piece of work with the universities and the combined authorities to be saying, how do we do this regionally? What might this look like? Because that's out with our abilities at the moment. But I think, Audrey, probably you've got.
Yeah, I mean, what I hope you see is a kind of relentless approach to continue to see what else can be done. And we work absolutely within parameters, not necessarily always within budget, but it is about, you know, we have envelopes, but it is what else is the next step? How can we take that further? What else can be done, particularly around targeted need? The bit that I really love here is the pop-up. So there may be a standard programme, for example, that's across the piece, but actually if there is a need and we're not able to meet that through the standard programme, then additional opportunities are then stepped up. And that is very much place-based and making sure that it meets community needs. Without doubt, and I'm hoping what you're hearing this morning is join up. So you can see the connectivity across virtual school, into schools, into social care. This is the whole of children's. There's almost a thread that runs all the way through it. We're very much connected into public health and the work that, you know, Emma straddles the two directorates but reports into children's. It is hugely important to make sure that we maximise all of the funding and opportunities and really do the most with that we possibly can. So we squeeze those really hard to do the most rather than just, I hope you're not hearing we accept bare minimum in any of this.
Yeah, it just, as I say, I've raised my concerns about having to be on free school meals to be entitled. So there's so many people that are in that middle barrier, that I say middle barrier, they're not even in the middle barrier, they're just the pennies above the free school meal threshold. And if you have to, for the HAF programme or any of the other support, it's like we haven't even got enough energy like officers to be able to tackle the demand or the waiting list for some of the surveys and stuff. So I just do have real concerns about this, and I just think I would love to see some universal offers, because as that kid, I can remember trying to sneak to pick up my yellow ticket. And I know the systems have changed, but actually they've still got to go to an office to upgrade or add stuff on, and you know, and whether it be the HAF programme where again the percentage, and I know in other areas there's some actual other youth service providers who've refused to deliver half because it's not fit for purpose in their areas. And I think we've done a lot of work to try and make it better.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I just think, again, it's at them and us. If you are if you attended a camp, some of these camps aren't get attended because then you're identified as being a person on free school meals. And I do think we need, I think you do, as I say, I think you are doing brilliant work and the tide is pushing and there's more people falling into needing this help and support, which is absolutely tragic. We're one of the richest nations that we can't offer the universe, because the thing is, it would have such an impact on health, attendance and everything else. So I will bang the drum, and if I'm on my deathbed, I'd be still demanding this, but hopefully by then Emma would have sorted it all out for us. No pressure.
Right, thank you. We will move on. Sorry, I do apologise. Go ahead.
I don't know, please, on round 2.
No, just on the citizens' advice, I know that it does happen. I've seen it happen in a primary school just outside of my ward. Does it happen in the academies? Do you get the input from the teachers who want to do it? And again, I know Caroline touched on it. It is often the teachers that are delivering this. So again, it's like they're putting that hat on of I'm going to be your trusted person, because they are the trusted person. They are the rooting, like as a member. They've certainly been my route into the community, talking to these trusted teachers. So I'm just wondering from the academy side, my boys both go to an academy, like how much they buy into this, because I know sometimes it's a bit difficult getting through their doors.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just putting in here. So I would just remind everybody, we do have really good working relationships with our academies. The doors are open. The teams are in across the board. So it doesn't necessarily need to be Emma, but actually across all of our service areas, they are very open. And quite often they approach us for support and help long before we're needing to go into schools and say, actually, could we do this? Could we do that? So it is a good working relationship. They do ask.
It'd be good to know exactly where they've been in the, like, you know, obviously I know of one in primary school, but I guess other members in their wards might want to know if that's happening in their area.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a report that will be due soon that comes from Citizens Advice. I mean, because they're in primary care, and just to your point about it being a teacher, it's usually an identified trusted person. So sometimes it's the person who runs the breakfast club or the after school, or and some really vocal advocates for it and the difference that it makes, because actually they want to feel empowered to be able to say, actually, there's something I can do about that. And it's the same with primary care. And some of the food provider settings have also got that community advice, but I can share Jeff's report when I get it with you.
Anybody else, just before I move on? No, thank you very much for that. It's appreciated. Agenda item 7, reports of the scrutiny officer, and it's Angus.
Thanks, Chair. The forward planning cabinet decisions, there isn't anything on there that would be relevant for this committee. I don't think, either on what cabinet have taken or what they will be taking in the next couple of months. But if members are aware of anything, do let me know. The work programme, we are coming to the end of this municipal year. So what I will do is I will share the 24-25 work programme with members well in advance of the next meeting, rather than it just coming out with the agenda. And then we'll have a discussion about the next 12 months of work programme at the end of the next meeting. But the work programme's there just for members to know.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick one, just with regards to the task and finish groups, can we get them back on track? And at the moment it seems like it's a big weight between, so I'd like to get with it and not go down on it.
I know you've had a lot on with that, so
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
Anybody else want to make any comments or questions? No, okay. Agenda item 8 is in business, of which there are none. And if that's everything, then I will